Welcome back to another edition of Horny and Park's podcast. I'm Jackson Parker, joined as always along by my co-hosts Jake Horniak and Andrew Gonzalez. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, very happy to be back. We had a solid run this summer over some podcasts and back on winter break from school, so it's time to get after it.
Time to get back on the grind. I'm excited. I think we got big things coming.
Yeah,
this is our first podcast that we're releasing on Apple Music and Spotify. So big moves. We're moving up in the world, you know.
Yeah, very excited about that. Distribute our content a little more. So that'll be great. And today in our podcast, we're talking about the NBA and specifically GMs and members of the front office, because everyone knows in this day and age of the NBA, you can't win a title or go far without a great GM.
Oh, it's an essential. I mean, you look at all the best teams in the NBA right now, and they all have very well qualified, very good men leading them up front in the front office. Because, I mean, to put together a championship team, I mean, it takes a lot of pieces. There's a lot of things that have to go into it. It's an incredibly difficult and stressful job.
Yeah, there's so many aspects to it, whether it's trading or draft picks, You see with Danny Ainge, he traded and signed some great players, and Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, and Paul Pierce, and they obviously won some titles there. And then he trades those guys and gets some great assets, which let him get Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with all that. So
I think Danny Ainge really is like the model in the current NBA of what a good GM should be, because you look at the Celtics, and I remember a couple years ago after that, the Garnett, Allen, Pierce big three broke up. I think they had one or two seasons where they missed the playoffs, but it seemed like they almost immediately got back to being one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference with the emergence of Isaiah Thomas. Obviously now they have Kyrie, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown. I mean, just an incredibly talented team. It seems like there was almost no transition period for them.
Without a doubt. They didn't miss a beat. Like you said, they had one or two down years in their back, and that really speaks to their front office. And, you also look at the Warriors. They built through the draft. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They obviously signed Kevin Durant in free agency. But
hey, free agency is the key to the NBA nowadays. I mean, you can't even deny it.
Exactly.
Especially now that we're in the era of the super team. I mean, signing big name free agents, it's really what it's all about.
Yeah, so you see, Golden State and the Boston Celtics, they have the blueprint to succeed. But then, if you have a bad GM, like say, Wizards GM Ernie Grunfeld,
Never heard of him.
Then some bad things can happen to the team. So today on this podcast, we're diving into everything about Ernie Grunfeld. His time at Tennessee, where he coined the term Bernie and Ernie with his legendary performance there. His NBA career, and then his front office career, and how he got to the Wizards. And then Robbie's going to dive into all the disastrous draft picks and moves he's made as Wizards GM.
Let's get into it.
All right, Jake. Now let's dive into the history of Ernie Grunfeld and his basketball career. So it's pretty clear to say that Ernie made his name for himself at University of Tennessee. He became the leading point scorer for the volunteer program until 1993.
Yep, when Allen Houston broke his record. Legendary player. At Tennessee, Ernie Grunfeld played alongside absolute basketball legend Bernard King. They were dubbed the Bernie and Ernie show. And obviously Ernie was, I don't know, I wasn't alive in 1973. I didn't really see what happened, but obviously you can see that Ernie was the one who broke the school's all-time scoring record. But I think it's safe to say that Bernard King was the one who went on to have a much more successful NBA career. Played for a lot longer than Ernie. Averaged about 23 points per game for his career. 4-time All-Star, 2-time first-team All-NBA.
Yeah, they actually they made a third for 30 about the combination. And as you said, Ernie's counterpart had a lot more successful NBA career than he did. Ernie averaged like 7 points, I think, on his career over a 9-year span. So not very impressive NBA career for Ernie Grunfeld.
No, it was not. And then after his career, he became the GM of the New York Knicks.
Yep, he was hired in July. He was hired on July 21st of 1993. He had an 8-year tenure with the Knicks, and he did pretty well when he was there. The team had a record of 397 wins and 227 losses and a 61-44 playoff record. They won the Atlantic Division 3 times and reached the NBA Finals twice. So Ernie did a pretty good job in New York, I'd say.
And after the Knicks, he spent 4 seasons as the GM of the Milwaukee Bucks. And he had a pretty successful tenure there. The team made the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years that he was there. So obviously, he had a good amount of success going into his tenure with the Wizards, which I'm going to assume is ultimately the reason they decided to hire him in the first place.
Yeah, as of right now, I think his resume is looking pretty good, through the Knicks and Bucks. But as we'll get to eventually in this podcast, his resume has a lot of blunders now.
Oh, a lot. Things quickly started to go downhill for old Ernie.
Yeah, and before Ernie, it was Michael Jordan. He was general manager of the Wizards.
The Wizards were really in some turmoil before Ernie Grunfeld got there with Michael Jordan as their GM. And then he came back to play, oddly enough, and the team really wasn't any good when Michael Jordan played for them. I think he put up pretty good numbers, but I'm pretty sure the team never made the playoffs under him. And then they had a very short tenure with Wes Unseld as GM. Great player. Wizards, well, I guess when he played, they were the Bullets. Bullets legend. Helped them win a championship.
He's in the rafters at Capital One, right?
Yeah, he is. He has his number retired. I mean, he was like the star of the team that won the only championship in franchise history. So, yeah, in 1978. So, I mean, his jersey better be retired.
Yeah, and also, go on.
Great player, horrible GM, which ultimately led to Ernie's hiring.
Yeah, this was also around the time when the Wizards were changing their name from the Bullets because that name was getting pretty problematic. But then
with the high crime rate in DC at the time.
Think about Wizard also. That's pretty problematic in its own right.
Yeah, you can definitely. Yeah,
I think they.
You can definitely spin that however you want to.
I think they could have done better with the name. To say the least.
They definitely could have done. I mean, the Wizards is just what?
For a different reason.
Yeah, Wizards. What do Wizards have to do with Washington D.C.? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. What do they have to do with this area?
They're just not good connotations for the Wizards.
No, not at all.
But we're gonna move on from that. But basically, that is how the Wizards ended up signing Ernie Grunfeld to be their general manager.
Solid move at the time, but I think if you had told anyone back then that 16 years later Ernie Grunfeld would still be GM, they probably would have been like, "Oh wow, how many championships have we won?"
0. That's the
0.
answer.
Not only 0, we haven't even made it to a championship.
We haven't even made it to an Eastern Conference final.
Forget making it to the NBA Finals. We haven't even made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that is the true testament of Ernie's time with the Wizards. All right, so we're not exactly the biggest fans of Ernie Grunfeld. We actually just recently did a protest outside of Capital One Arena, a Fire Ernie protest. But it would be unfair to criticize him without at least acknowledging some of the successes he had, especially early on in his career, because, I mean, he did have some genuine success early on in his tenure with the Wizards. His first season as GM, the team sucked. They went 25-57. But the next year, he signed free agent point guard Gilbert Arenas, who went on to be pretty good for, I mean, we'll talk about what happened later on down the road
in the
with
locker
him.
room, allegedly.
But I think it's safe to say early on that was a great signing. He traded the number 5 pick in the 2004 draft and Jerry Stackhouse for Anton Jameson, who was an all-star at the time. He also traded Kwame Brown, thank God, for another all-star, Caron Butler. So he put together this big three of Arenas, Butler, and Jameson. And for a solid 3 or 4 year stretch, the team had a lot of success. So they never made it that far in the playoffs. In 2004, they won their first round series against the Bulls 4-2. They then got swept in the next round by the Heat. And the next 3 years, they made the playoffs and lost in the first round all 3 years to the Cavaliers and LeBron James. as good as the team was, they just kept running into LeBron in the playoffs. I mean, that's just a bad break for any team, you know. But it's definitely fair to say that early on they did have a lot of genuine success, and it looked like Ernie had put together a pretty solid foundation for the team.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, at this point in the in Ernie's tenure, you know, things are looking pretty good. You know, some playoff appearances here and there. You know, got some solid talent, but as we'll get to, it didn't last too long.
It did not last too long. It was really around the 2007-2008 mark where things started to really go downhill.
Yeah, so let's get into the draft. So 2006, I'm going to name you our draft picks. I can't really pronounce these names, but it's Alexei Petrov and Vladimir Veremenko. So I have no idea who these guys are.
And to be fair, I was very young, but I watched the Wizards back then. I was a Wizards fan. I do not remember those guys at all. This is the first time I've ever heard those names in my life.
Yeah, I mean, they sound Russian, but I don't really know. I mean, in that draft, they could have gotten Rajon Rondo or Kyle Lowry, but Grunfeld went with
Kyle Lowry was drafted in 2006.
Yes, apparently. So after 2006, we go into 2007 and 2008. That's where we get Nick Young and JaVale McGee, a.k.a. the Shaqtin' a Fool crew.
And to be fair, in the 2007-2008 season, the team actually did make the playoffs. They lost in the first round again to LeBron and the Cavaliers. But obviously those two draft picks were kind of a turning point for the team, I would say. Because, you know, those two have gone on to have pretty solid NBA careers. I mean, both of them won rings last year with the Warriors, which kind of some bullshit, but we don't need to go into that. But, I mean, it's safe to say it's 10 years later and they still have pretty solid careers. But early on in their careers, they were, I think it's safe to say, the laughingstock of the league.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Basically, they made Shaqtin' a Fool famous, especially JaVale McGee with his classic antics. JaVale being JaVale.
You know, missing layups,
always
doing stuff I do in rec.
Always trying to do the most.
Yeah, but 2009, the Wizards take a dark turn. So Wizards, they have a top 5 pick, and you know they could get Ricky Rubio, Steph Curry, but instead they trade this top 5 pick for Randy Foye and Mike Miller. That hurts. That just hurts to say.
Ugh. Randy Foye and Mike Miller. I'm pretty sure both of them didn't last longer than a year on the team.
Oh yeah, and they did not last very long at all.
I mean, what in the hell was he thinking?
Yeah, no, it said that the Miller and Foye, they averaged like 10 points a game for the Wizards.
Combined?
I think each.
They each averaged 10 points a game?
Around that. Either way, it's not impressive. I'm not a stats guy. I just know that's not impressive.
Considering they passed up on potentially getting Steph Curry, then that's definitely not impressive. I mean,
not at all.
Not to mention, in the 2009-2010 season, the team went 26-56.
That's a solid record,
They won 7 more games than the previous year. They went 19-63 in the 2008-2009 campaign. So I guess a slight improvement, but
yeah. So
considering where it looked like the team was going a few years prior, definitely not a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And in 2010, things definitely get better. That's the year we get John Wall. So I'm not complaining about that draft, but one thing I will say is we did draft Kevin Seraphin with the 17th overall pick. #KSLife. He wasn't the best.
Was not the best, and I'm hesitant to give Ernie credit for drafting John Wall, because I think it's safe to say anyone who had the number 1 overall pick was going to draft him. It seemed like he was pretty much the unanimous decision for first overall pick, and it turned out great. I mean, he's probably been one of the best players in the history of the franchise.
Oh yeah.
But I'm hesitant to really give Ernie the credit for that one.
Yeah. And then 2011, we're back to a bad year. So 6th overall pick, we draft Jan Vesely. And as much Jan Vesely, He's a fan favorite. He's a player that I kind of try and mold my game after in rec basketball. I kind of consider myself the Airwolf.
The Airwolf.
So I just want to say I have a lot. If Jan, if you're listening, I have a ton of respect for you, and I would love for you to come on the podcast. But so that wasn't great when you could have gotten like Kawhi or Klay Thompson, and we also got Chris Singleton and Shelvin Mack that draft. I don't think either of those. I don't think all or any is Shelvin Mack in the league. Can we get the stats department on that?
I would not imagine that.
I don't think there's any way that Chris Singleton is still playing.
Oh, Chris Singleton is currently playing for FC Barcelona Lhasa.
Yeah, and I would like to mention that Jan Vesely is having a pretty successful career in Turkey.
Hold up. Shelvin Mack is actually on the Grizzlies right now.
Wow.
Good for him.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I'm happy for Jan because he's doing well in the Turkish league. I think he's won a couple titles.
That's where he belongs, really.
Yeah, you know.
He didn't have the skill set for the NBA.
Yeah.
Great athlete. Great athlete.
I mean, that's why they call him the Airwolf.
Yeah, I mean, he was called the Airwolf for a reason. But I honestly don't know if I've ever watched a pro basketball player who had such little skill. Like, that man had zero skill in the game of basketball. He was maybe the worst free throw shooter ever. I mean, he was so unbelievably bad. I remember he airballed some free throws.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy that I can kind of compare myself to in rec basketball, you know. Not the most athletic and the most skilled guy, but, you know, you work hard, you get some boards, and, you know, you win a couple Turkish league titles.
And, you know, we all love that guy, but I think it's safe to say he was not getting the job done for the Wizards.
Yeah, probably.
And especially considering what we could have had instead. It's just...
Yeah, not the best pick. So, moving on, 2012, we get Bradley Beal and Satoransky, so no complaints there.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that.
And then 2013, that was when we picked Otto Porter, 3rd overall. Then we got Glenn Rice Jr.
Yeah.
Otto
Porter, I was pretty happy with that pick in the moment. From what I remember, that was not a very good draft.
Yeah, the only person they could have gotten notable is the Greek freak, Giannis.
Who, correct me if I'm wrong, he went 15th overall? Somewhere around there. So, I mean, it's pretty unrealistic
he was an underrated
expect
guy.
The Wizards to have picked him with the number 3 pick.
Yeah. You know, fun fact, Otto Porter still blocks me on Instagram.
Really?
What are you afraid of, Otto?
Could you give us some context behind that?
Basically, his rookie year, you know, he wasn't having the greatest year. I think we all had some pretty high expectations, and they weren't really meeting it. So, you know, me being a freshman in high school, I was just like, I just wanted him to have fun in the D League if he went there. And Otto didn't really like that. But, you know, if you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, I'm here for it. But, yeah, moving on. So, 2014, kind of uneventful, except for the fact that they traded Jordan Clarkson for like $2 million cash.
Oh, my God. At the time, I didn't know anything about Jordan Clarkson. But I was like, really? You're trading a player for cash? The Wizards probably make $2 million off of tickets from like one game. And you're trading... Okay, I don't know exactly how much
We're not math guys.
We're not math guys, but I can't imagine it takes that long for an NBA team to make $2 million. And you're trading a player for cash. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know you could trade players for cash.
It must have been, you know, Ernie or Ted. They were in the whole gambling wise. They just needed a quick pick me up. So they got some cash. They got the bag, and
they probably were like, this guy Jordan Clarkson's gonna suck. No one's even gonna know who he is.
Yeah. All right. So we've gone over his draft blunders, but now let's go into his bad free agency moves.
Ooh, and that right there is really where I think he has ruined this team.
Yeah. So we're gonna start out with giving Gilbert Arenas a 6-year, $111 million contract.
Hurts to think about.
You know, obviously Gilbert, you know, he was a successful Wizard, you know, definitely a fan favorite, but I think we just got done paying him like a couple years ago, and he hasn't played for the Wizards in a while. He had bad knees, and it was a really bad contract to give.
It was. At the time, the owner was Abe Pollin, who actually used to live down the street from me before he died.
Rest in
peace.
He
was very old at the time, and there's a lot of speculation that the reason they gave him that massive contract is because he figured that re-signing Gilbert and keeping that big three together was the only way that they were going to ever win a championship in his lifetime. And considering he was kind of towards the end of his life, he just went full send.
He went all in.
So after Gilbert got hurt.
Yeah. In hindsight, it was a terrible move. I mean, even at the time, it seemed a little ridiculous given Gilbert's injury history. But I mean, it turned out horribly. I'm pretty sure that season after they signed him, I want to say he played in one game, maybe two, something. I mean, he played in like literally a handful of games, if even that. It was ridiculous. And then of course the good old gun controversy with my boy Javaris Crittenton,
Who I think is currently in prison right now for like second-degree murder.
Yeah, he literally murdered a guy.
Yeah, so not a great locker room and character guy, to say the least.
Definitely not one of Ernie's better pickups.
No.
23 years.
23 years.
23 years in prison. Wow.
That is just so wild to think that locker room got so out of control that they're like, all right, we're bringing Glocks into the equation.
Mm-hmm. They were pulling guns on each other in the locker room. Like, just think about that dysfunction. Imagine if you heard today that like the Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant pulls out a Glock on Steph Curry. Like, could you imagine that?
Instead of a burner account, he's got a Glock. Wouldn't go over great. That's for sure. But, yeah, so that was tough. And then another just horrible tenure was the 2016 offseason. Man, that was bad. That's where it looked promising to start out because, you know, Al Horford looking like, oh, he's going to sign him to the Wizards, but now he goes to the Celtics. So Ernie panics, and he gives Jan Mahimi a 4-year, $64 million deal.
And you see, the thing is, that season was actually probably the most successful season that the Wizards have had in recent memory. It went downhill after that. But even during that season, it was pretty evident that the Jan Mahimi signing was a huge disaster.
They also signed Andrew Nicholson to a 4-year, $26 million contract, and Jason Smith to a 3-year, $16 million. And I'm not going to complain because Jason Smith he's a locker room guy, you know.
Oh, I loved having Jason Smith on the squad.
I miss Jason Smith. Such a dad.
He really is. He is the epitome of a dad. But yeah, obviously not great signings for the team, especially the Jan Mahimi one. I mean, that guy has contributed almost nothing to the team.
Yeah, and he averages like 3 points a game, and just
I'll give it to him. He's played some good defense at times, but you don't sign a guy for $64 million to play defense.
Yeah, and just to put it into perspective, you know, obviously the NBA has a tremendous amount more revenue than the NHL does. But you think about in the NHL offseason, you give John Carlson an 8-year, $64 million contract, and that guy is one of the best players on the ice, like day in and day out. And then you give Jan Mahimi $64 million for 4 years, so more money, and he averages 3 points a game. It doesn't seem right.
It's not right at all. I know he was coming off probably the best season of his career with the Pacers, but even then, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who would have said $64 million is a good price for him.
That's 7.7.
Was that just the crazy NBA offseason where like Mozgov was getting all the money and like Delhi? I mean, to be fair,
I'm pretty sure that was the year after.
Is it the year after?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we'll check that.
But that season, the team actually played very well. They came a game away from making their first ever Eastern Conference Finals appearance, but we didn't, thanks to Kelly Olynyk.
That was just the part that Kelly the Clinic Olynyk, man. That was the part that hurt the most. If it was any other guy on that team, I would have been fine. But the fact that we got beat by Olynyk, that hurt.
Oh, that was a rough night. That was a real rough, because I even remember, I think the Caps had been eliminated by the Penguins like a few days before that.
Yeah, that was tough.
And I really needed that Wizards win, and when they didn't get it, it was just...
Yeah, quick reminder, even though we're being pretty big downers about this or anything, remember, the Washington Capitals are still Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah,
Don't forget that.
Don't ever forget that. If you're ever feeling sad, Just remember, we're the champs.
Yeah, side note, me and Jake were in the building last night against the Penguins. Tough loss, but electric atmosphere.
Electric atmosphere, good game, close game. The boys are buzzing this year.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking a repeat is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, back to back for sure. And we can't talk about Ernie's draft or trade failures without talking about what just happened, which was just, to say the least, a shit show.
It really was. I mean, I don't even really understand exactly what went down.
So basically, for people that don't know, it's a very confusing situation. But Ernie was gonna trade Austin Rivers and Kelly Oubre to the Suns and then the Grizzlies, and then they were gonna get the Wizards were gonna get Trevor Ariza from the Suns. But Ernie Grunfeld, if I'm correct, he didn't talk with the Grizzlies about it, and he got one of the names wrong. He got a different Brooks. And so they ended up getting Ariza, but I mean the Wizards, they just became the instant embarrassment of the NBA that night.
They really did. And say what you want about Trevor Ariza and Kelly Oubre, I think you can make a good case for whether or not Oubre needed to stay or leave. And everyone has their own opinions on bringing Ariza back. Personally, I like it. I feel like with where our team's going, we could use a boost like that. But just all the details surrounding the trade, it's pathetic. It really is.
Yeah, it is just, and I mean, the only good thing is, with this national spotlight on the Wizards, normal everyday NBA folks who aren't Wizards fans can look at this and be like, wait, what is going on? How's this guy still have a job after 15 years, 0 50-win seasons, and 0 Eastern Conference Finals appearances? I mean, Ted Leonsis, does he have something on you?
It's ridiculous, and I think what really defines Ernie's reign, especially lately, and this doesn't get talked about enough, but I think it's his lack of just, he has not been able to bring any big name free agents to Washington. And when you think about it, there's absolutely no reason why that should be the case. We're the capital of the country. We're a huge sports market. We have multiple all-stars on our team. John Wall, Bradley Beal. I mean, tell me who would not want to play with John Wall? Who would not want to play with John Wall? A guy with that kind of passing ability? It's ridiculous. We have not been able to get anyone. Our biggest free agent signing in the past few years has been Dwight Howard, who's barely played it all this year because he's been out with a friggin' ass injury.
Yeah, I don't even think he's with the team right now. But, to go off, your point, the Wizards, they're just, nationally, they're pretty irrelevant.
They really are.
You're talking First Take or ESPN or national media, no one really talks about the Wizards and, only about their dysfunction.
Even a few years ago when the team was, looking like they could potentially be, I don't think anyone thought they were a finals contender because, obviously LeBron was on the Cavs. But I think there were a lot of people who thought that the Wizards might be the second best team in the East. And even then, I feel like they rarely got any attention in the national media. And I don't know.
I got to ask Ted Leonsis, man, when is enough enough? He's done a very good job with the Caps. Obviously won the Cup, which they have not done in a while. He's drafted some great players, but show that same effort and care to the Wizards because you own that team. Also, you own two teams. You can't just worry about one, buddy.
And if anything, I think with the situation that the Wizards are in right now, they just need to do something differently. They need to change something. Whether that's new GM or new coach, I think they definitely need a new coach.
I agree.
I think Scott Brooks is a good coach, but he's not the right coach for this team. Yes. And you can blame Ernie for that. I mean, Ernie's responsible for hiring coaches.
They gave him a ton of money.
And look what's happened. I mean, we had one good season with him, but the rosters basically stayed the same, and we've just gotten worse every year.
Yeah, it's just Wizards are just the definition of a plateauing team.
They really are. And it sucks. It really sucks because it looked a couple years ago like John Wall and Bradley Beal were really starting to create something special here. And it looks like it's really all gone to shit. I wouldn't be surprised if one or both of them are gone after this year. And I think it's pretty clear that just something needs to change. And I think that something is firing Ernie. I mean,
I 100% agree. And thank you to everyone for listening. And thank you to everyone who came out to the Fire Ernie Grunfeld protest Sunday against the Lakers. Go check out the Sideline Observer, Instagram and Twitter. Twitter is at the Sideline O. Instagram is the Sideline Observer. You can also like us on Facebook. And make sure to stay tuned for some great content coming up. Thanks, guys.